Welcome to Art for All Ages Online. Today we have a new painting for you. It's called Painting Number 6, The Beach Scene with the Cliff. Let's take a look. This is our painting today. It is the beach scene with the cliff. We're going to walk you through this painting, as always, one simple step at a time. Today's painting will require 90% sponge work. Very little brushwork involved. There are basically 3 motions for today's painting. There's motion number 1, which we are also going to use with the finesse move called the lift. Then there's the second motion, which is pat. We'll show you where, when, and how to pat with your sponge. And a little bit of brushwork, and that's it. We're going to get you through this painting very simply, one step at a time. Here we go. So with today's painting, we have our basic setup with the yellow border wrapped around for the tape. We have one extra piece of tape here that is about 25% down at the bottom edge of the painting. If you need, you can use your T-square to line up that piece of tape to make sure it gets set up horizontally for your painting. As we said, this painting is very simple. It requires almost all sponge work. And we're going to get started with the mixing of the first color. For today's painting, we're going to start off with a basic Prussian blue. If you would like, you may also add in a little bit of a touch of some emerald green. That will make the color a little bit more aqua for the sky. That's kind of nice. And once you have that color mixed up with your brush, we'll put the brush down and we'll go ahead and we'll utilize the sponge. Now, to create this particular sky for today's painting, we will be using what we call the lift. We're going to start our sponge here on the yellow tape, and to begin with, we will go all the way across. Then we'll start underneath that section and we will pull it with a small slight lift before we get to the edge of this painting. Once we've done the lift a few times on this side of the painting, then we're going to wet the sponge, squeeze it out, and then we'll soften up what we've painted. Now, I'm left-handed, and I also can do the lift from either direction. If you are more comfortable doing the lift from this direction, then you can have your painting with the lighter part of the sky in this manner. We'll show you how this works. I have the blue on my sponge, on the tape, and pull across with the number 1 motion, nice and soft. Now, this is a little dry, so I'll get it a little more wet. There we go. There's the lift. See this lift? See how this feathers and tapers off and this looks like a white cloud? That's what we're looking for. Wet the tip of the sponge, squeeze it out, and then with a little moisture on the sponge, you can come back and you can soften up that area, and now we have this beautiful sky with a soft cloudy area here on the left. Now, once this is done, we want to take the brush again, and we're going to mix up a very soft bluish gray color that we're going to utilize to create some mountains on this horizon line here. You can do this later on with the brush if you want, but you can also utilize the sponge to create these as well. This soft color means there's a little bit more water in here than usual, and that will create the light color for the mountains. When we do this particular motion with the sponge, once again, we want to point the sponge right at the painting. We're also going to use a little bit of pressure to push down on the sponge so that we can create a nice, strong edged line with the sponge. Watch and see how we do this. So I'll take the sponge now with that light gray color. I'm going to come down here to where the edge is. I'm going to point the sponge and softly, softly wave. Now, this is a little softer than I thought, so let's get it a little bit darker. There we go. And just voila, nice and easy. We have some mountains here on the edge of the horizon. Now you'll notice I did not bring the mountains way, way up high. They are way down low, right next to the horizon line. That puts them in the distance for today's painting, which is really nice. Now, once this has been achieved, you're going to clean out your sponge, clean out your brush. We have a little tricky part, which is this piece of tape. We're going to remove it. We want to try to remove it in a way that, number one, we don't rip the painting, and also to remove it in a way that we also can reuse this piece of tape. For now, I'm just going to put it down here. When you're doing this at home, you want to make sure that the part of the painting up high, the sky and those little mountains that we just put in, that part of the painting is dry before you place the yellow tape back onto the painting. Now that I've given this sufficient time to dry, I'm going to reposition this yellow tape. And it's more important that we get it so that it lines up, but even if there's a little tiny bit of the horizon underneath the tape, that is better than creating a white line for this particular painting. If you want to create a white line, then the tape gets pushed down just a little bit lower, but that's a different kind of an effect. What we're going to do now is we're going to create the shoreline. The shoreline is going to be created with basically two colors repeating almost the same pattern, but the catch is we're going to be using the motion that we call the lift. I want to remind you all at home that this pulling and lifting straight up is not the lift. We want to slowly lift off like a plane lifting off the runway. That will give us that soft, feathered, tapered look that we're looking for. Make sure our sponge is cleaned out. We're going to utilize the brush, and we're going to mix up a color called yellow ochre. It's kind of like a mustardy brown yellow color. And we'll mix it over here in our palette. If you do not have yellow ochre in your particular palette, then basically some yellow and a little bit of some brown color. Yellow and brown will give you a semblance of the yellow ochre color. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the painting and see what kind of shape we want to create with this shoreline. Looking at our painting, we want to make sure that we do several things. Number one, we're going to lay down the first color, and it is going to be in this somewhat U shape. We want to try to create that U shape. Sometimes also the part of the U could start here and go longer down here. That's another way to create a semi-U shape, but basically a U shape is what we're looking for. The other thing is we want to remember, see how this tapered feel is over here that feathers off? We want to try to create that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the lift in a little bit more detail. The lift, sometimes people will be comfortable doing it from one direction or more comfortable doing it from another direction. Some people find that doing the lift actually works best to just pull down and away. So depending upon what works best for you, you might want to turn your painting into the proper direction to do the lift that makes it most comfortable for you. So now we're going to go ahead and take that yellow ochre color and we're going to create the lift. You can see here how we have this soft feathered tapered look. That's what we're looking for. We're also looking for what I refer to as the U shape. And if you look at the painting, you can see this is a U shape elongated, and that's what we're looking for. The other thing that you want to be careful of, because we're going to be putting a cliff here on this side of the painting, you want to make sure that your sandy beach is long enough so that you have room to create that cliff over here. Once you have done the first layer of the sand in that yellow ochre color, we're now going to mix up a new color, which is a rusty brown color called burnt sienna. This burnt sienna color will be used to give the sand a little bit more oomph, especially on this side of the painting. What I want to explain to you is we do not want to lose the sandy shore that connects to the ocean over here. What we're looking to do is we're looking to create a little bit darker, but just a shorter lift, so that we're not going to lose that first color. we're just going to add a second color that you can kind of see some variety there. And see, you can now see the darker color here, and you can still see the lighter color that was next to it. Some of this might be lost when we create the cliff, but it's an easy way to create these variations so that we have it for the rest of the painting that we can see. And we're going to do the exact same thing now over here with 2 or 3 colors to create the ocean. We're going to start off with a very light Prussian blue color. And when I say light, it's light because we use a little bit more water in the paint, and that creates a lighter color. And again, what we want to do is we want to create that same lifting motion. What we're going to do now is we're going to again take a look at the painting to see how the shoreline lifting and the ocean lifting really don't touch. We're going to talk about that. Let's take a look. What we're talking about is this area right in between the shoreline and the ocean. If it's actually left the white of the paper, that's perfectly fine, because it's like the sea foam that comes from the sea just raging up against the edge of the sandy shore. And you can also see that we have 3 different levels. We have a soft level here that gets painted first, the second level here, which is a little bit darker, and then the third level here that's even darker still. And that will give us that feeling of the waves. So let's start with our first layer. We have the light blue onto our sponge. And again, we're going to use the lift motion and create that first wave. Now I want it a little bit lighter, so I went ahead and wet the sponge to soften up the color. This first one is supposed to be very, very soft. We want to try to not touch this area where the sand is touching here. We want to leave the white. I came in a little, that's okay. A little down here, that's fine. But this white in here is very nice. You'll also notice that I'm holding the sponge in this direction and kind of pointing it a little bit at the painting. I'm doing that because this is a very narrow surface area. Another way to do this would be to turn the painting, use the broad sponge, and lift it up this way. That's another technique if you have more room. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the exact same thing with a slightly darker color. To create this, we're going to use pretty much the same color, maybe add a little bit of the emerald green to make it a little more aqua. But what we're going to do is not add as much water in the paint, and that should make it a little bit darker. Once again, we'll put our sponge on the tape and we will pull into the painting. You can see that that's much darker, maybe a little too dark for my taste. So we'll soften the sponge up and we'll keep using that lift and create our second wave into the painting. Once we have our second wave into the painting, we'll clean out our sponge and we'll mix up our third color to go last on the wave. It is again the base of the Prussian blue, which is fine, but this time we're going to add in a little purple and a little Payne's gray, and that'll really bump it up for us. That's what we're looking for, is a nice deep rich color here. Now there's a couple of things you want to make sure you're careful of here, which is to make sure that these levels are dry before you go in with the next paint. Another great technique is that the sponge also should be squeezed dry so that when you do this, it's not so wet that it lifts the painting. The other thing is, if you're pushing really hard on the painting, that will lift the color instead of adding the color. We're looking for just a soft motion with that lifting. Oh yeah, look at that, nice and soft. There we go. See, now we can see that we have the different waves going into the painting. You can even add a fourth one on the end here if you want to make it even darker, if that's your desire to do so. Okay, so once that's done, we want to very carefully remove this piece of tape. Again, we want to be careful that we do not rip the painting by accident. Oh boy, look at this. Nice. I like it. See, because we ended up having the tape not exactly on the horizon line, but a little bit short of that, that's what created this slightly darker edge here right on the horizon. That was a real bonus for us. Now we have the shore, we have the ocean, we have the sky. What we want to do now is we want to paint the cliff. I love this. We have not used anything but our sponge to actually paint this painting to the level where we are now. At this time, we are going to start to use a little bit of brushwork, and we're going to show you how that works now. To create our cliff, what we want is the burnt sienna brown color, the rusty brown color, and we're going to mix it right into where we mixed our blue. When you mix this particular color, you want to mix it so that it is a little bit on the dry side. You do not want it super wet. We'll talk with you about why that's important. I'm adding a little bit of the Payne's Gray also because I want to beef it up a little bit. It's a little dead. I'll add a little bit of some alizarin crimson. There we go. We're getting a nice rich brownish color here. Now once we have that, we're going to utilize the brush. Okay? We'll roll the brush into the paint to give us a nice tip. What we want to do is we want to create this cliff. Now we don't want the cliff to eliminate all the way over here to cover up our beautiful shoreline, so we want the cliff close to the edge over here. I personally like to make sure that the cliff starts above the horizon line. You want it up here. Don't put the cliff down here. Up here. And when it comes to the cliff, I like to start off with a shape that has a little bit of a plateau. And so we're just going to give ourselves a little bit of a shape of where we kind of want to have this rocky shoreline here. Once we get into the area where we have the beach, then we can drag the cliff line over to this side. This is an important part of the shape. The base of the cliff down here is broader than the cliff side up here. And that will allow us so that we're able to make sure that it stands really firm and it's based on a firm foundation. Once you have the basic shape, you just take the same brown color that we've mixed up with the brush and just go ahead and fill that in. This is not difficult. It's not rocket science. Just fill that in, squirby, scrub it in, wave the brush back and forth, real simple. Once that's done, now we can take the sponge and some of that other color and we can begin to pat into the cliff side. Watercolor is transparent, and if you're not careful, if your color for the cliff is not dark enough, you're going to see the horizon line shining through the transparency there. So you want to make sure that you keep that dark enough so that it covers up where the horizon line was. You also want to make sure as you're patting this area that you don't pat into the sky or into the shoreline over here. You can get close, but you don't want to actually go over. If you do happen to go over, no big deal, just get the brush out and kind of fix up the edge over there again. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to another part of the painting, and the reason is because the cliff is still wet. We want to give it time to dry. But we don't want to go out and have coffee or sit around doing nothing, so we're going to continue to work on another part of the painting, and in this case, the trees. If you take a look at today's painting, there are these trees here that are at the top of the cliff. And what we're going to do is what we almost always do, which is we're going to put the leaves of the trees into the cliff first. We'll clean out our sponge, and we're going to go ahead this time, and we're going to mix up particular green called Hooker's Green. Some people are uncomfortable with that name, but that's the real name of the color. Some people call it Hunter's Green, and that's fine. I'll add a little Payne's Gray to bump it up. What we want to do is we want to utilize the second motion, which is patting with our sponge. If you're not familiar with this particular motion, watch our first video, which teaches you all the basic tricks of the trade on how to pat with your sponge. The basic gist is soft and random, which is hard to see on my camera view here, but I am being very random. Okay, that's good enough for the trees there. And you'll notice I painted right on the edge of the tape. That's great. That means that we'll have a nice clean edge when we take the tape off of the painting to give us that beautiful white frame. What we're going to do now is we're going to continue to work on the trees, and we're going to mix up some Payne's gray. And what we want to do is we want to create a little bit of a shadow at the bottom half of these leaves on the tree. In order to do that, we'll take the Payne's gray and pat very softly right over the green, but at the bottom half of it to create a little bit of a shadow. There we go. This next part of the painting does require the brush. Well, not really. This brush, the tiny one. We're going to paint these tiny trees onto the top of the cliff and into the leaves that we've just painted. You may or may not have watched some of our other videos. I highly recommend that you check out our free video, which is how to paint with a brush, in particular for painting birds and trees. That will give you the techniques that you need to do what we're talking about here. As usual for myself, I will turn the painting upside down. This allows me to paint the trees in a way that is most comfortable for my wrist and for my technique, which I teach you in other videos. I will again use the Payne's gray color. I will mix that up and I will roll my brush into the painting palette so the brush is at a point. I'm going to come and put the brush right into the top of the cliff and bring the trees into the leaves. If I find that this color is too strong, I can always go back and add a little water to the paint so it will soften it up. There's no need to make all the trees exactly the same. We can make some thick and some thin, some on an angle, some straight. We just want some variety here. If your hand wiggles, well, hey, that's great. There's lots of wiggly trees all over the place that just kind of wiggle all into themselves. Okay, and you can add as many trees or as few trees as you want. That's completely up to you. All trees have to be thicker at the bottom and thinner at the top. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the sponge, and again I'm going to use the Payne's gray to pat a little bit of a darker shadow to kind of blend in those dark branches into the leaves there. What we want to do now is a couple of different things. We want to utilize some more variety here in the cliff. It's dry now, which is great. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to take some of that same hunter green that we used in the tree leaves over here, and we're going to take that hunter green and we're going to use the sponge and pat in a little hint of some of that green into the cliff. Give it some variety. One last color. We'll clean out our sponge, clean out our brush, and we taught you this in the first class. We're going to get our brush loaded with a lot of yellow. Load the sponge with that same color, yellow, and we're going to pat it here in the upper crown of the tree's leaves. We don't want to give the tree a halo, but we want to give the tree leaves some brightness. We'll also take that same yellow and pat a little bit of it into the cliff, again for some variety into the painting. I'll also take a little bit of the Payne's gray, that's really dried sponge, and pat that so that the cliff corner down here is nice and dark. Once the tape is removed, you will see a beautiful painting just like the one that we've made here. This is painting number 6, the beach scene with the cliff. We hope you've enjoyed it and hope you check out many of our other videos that are available through subscription. Thank you. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed this video, check out our full library for more videos with our sponge painting system at artforalagesonline.com. Or if you're interested in live art classes for you or your community, check us out at artforallages.com. We wish you well in all your artistic endeavors. Thank you.